All right, everyone, you've made it to the very last of our events today. It's been quite an amazing thing. Now we are joined by my good friend Himali Kumar. I've known her for many, many years. I've worked with her, and Mark Mullins, my new friend. So I'm going to start with Mark. And Mark, can you please introduce yourself?
Sanjeev, thank you. It's great to be here in South Carolina. It's afternoon. So I'm Mark Mullins. I'm the Chief Data Officer at United Community Bank, and we're a $26 billion bank headquartered in Greenville, South Carolina. I report up to our CIO, who reports into the CEO, and my team consists really of five primary areas. I have a team that's focused on data governance and data quality. Then I have data operations, data delivery, data architecture, and then our team that's focused on reporting and risk analytics. So it's great to be here today.
Very nice, and very nice to have you. Himali, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Himali Kumar. I am a data enthusiast. I've been in IT industry for about 25 plus years. Proud to say I have worked for three Fortune 500 companies, International Paper, then FedEx, and now I'm at AutoZone. My responsibilities at AutoZone is the data ecosystem, establishing our data cloud platform in the cloud itself, and also managing the on-prem data warehouse. AutoZone is a $16 billion company. We have about 7,000 stores in United States, Brazil, and Mexico. We have two divisions, retail and commercial, and those two are basically our core of AutoZone.
I
And Sanjeev, nice to see you again. It's been a pleasure working with you in the past and look forward to this conversation.
Thank you. Every time I go by AutoZone, I think of you. So, yeah.
That's great.
so, so I have a question, Himali. First, so I have two questions. One is, what is the data and analytics environment space for you, and how do you handle data quality?
Okay. So our ecosystem is primarily, if you look at the from on-premises perspective, it's Oracle, and we have SaaS. SaaS, I'm talking about the SaaS platform, the analytics platform, not the software as a service. And then also Web Focus, Tableau, Alteryx, these are all on-premises tool sets. But we are migrating towards the cloud, and the cloud choice is right now Google Cloud. So we're building our data lake using GCS as well as BigQuery. We have Looker Studio, both as our analytics platform. We are also now delving into Vertex AI, building our MLOps platform. So primarily GCP from the cloud perspective. And how do I deal with data quality? I think the big thing we are trying to work with is let's not have data quality as a separate segment, but think about it as a part of the data ops, data pipelines, data engineering, building it into the process rather than coming up with a overall data quality process. It needs to become a second nature for us. So that's how we're dealing with the data quality.
That is really refreshing to hear. So I want to go to Mark. And Mark, tell us about your environment and your data quality setup.
Yeah, thanks, Sanjeev. So we're primarily a Microsoft shop. My team, the data operations team, manages a little over 800 databases that are primarily on-prem. We're primarily using the Microsoft stack of technologies on-prem. We do have some DB2 and some Postgres that was stood up in AWS recently. We're probably similar to Himali. We're using on-prem Alteryx, Tableau, Cognos Analytics. Our data science, we have a team under our treasury group. They're using Python and R. We're in the process of doing our first project in Microsoft's Azure environment. We're standing up ADLS and also kind of porting an on-prem model into Synapse. So we're investigating and researching a lot of other technologies, obviously, because there's so much change happening. But those are probably the primary technologies. And then Of course, we in the chief data office, there's a number of different pillars in our data strategy. So, data quality being one. We're working with the DQ Labs team, and then for data lineage, we've stood up a product called Manta, which is really helping us with some of our. When I think about data quality, there's a lot of things that come to mind, but essentially we've made it a part of the CDO agenda. And I think that's kind of consistent with what Hamali's saying is it doesn't need to be out kind of on its own. So it's underneath my kind of umbrella of responsibility. And, like a fast growing company, we're growing through a lot of acquisitions. We've generally, in the 7 years I've been here, we do about 2 a year. So what that means is we get a lot of data from a lot of companies that may not have actually don't have a chief data officer, likely don't have anyone that's really focused on data quality. And so we may inherit essentially some of those data quality issues that come from, mergers and acquisitions. But it's fast growing, a lot of things that we need to work on, and a lot of legacy technical debt where we're trying to understand how things are working while at the same time, working on things like the Azure project, which are, brand new, and we're trying to build new, modern solutions.
Have you, Mark, you mentioned that, you get data from all of these other sources and data mergers and acquisitions happen. So you inherit quality at all levels, I'm guessing, some good,
Mm-hmm.
some not so good. Have you been able to quantify the effect of poor data quality on the business?
So I would say, be very transparent. The general answer is no. I think it's very difficult to do kind of at our level of maturity and resourcing. We can point to specific instances where, the quality of data, for instance, in, all banks send out they send out bank statements. Well, we get statements back. So if we were to buy a bank and there were issues with addresses and those kinds of things, we would certainly begin to see, information from our, statement vendor that the costs are going up. We're getting more return mail. Same kind of situation can happen, obviously, with, kind of our marketing strategies. Some of the more, kind of important ones are things like, every bank is notified by the federal government of people who pass away. So, there's many different systems in a bank. There's many different controls that need to be implemented when a customer passes away. And so we look at a simple element like date deceased, and we're trying to develop, really proactive ways to alert every team that needs to know and build digital, automation around turning on things like a hold flag, alerts that might go to folks who are in our branches and so forth. So we can look at what I would say are really operational losses, related to maybe that not being in place and kind of quantify it that way. There's a couple others that I'm kind of beginning to kind of draw out. But it's difficult for us right now to really quantify the impact, but we're learning and we're trying to develop more materials to communicate up the organization.
That is great. So Himali, how about yourself? And I know you cannot talk about actual what's happening in your job, but from your experiences having worked at 3 different Fortune 500 companies.
Yeah, I like what Mark was saying. It's very difficult to quantify the number, right? But there are 2 areas where we kind of look into, which can help us build an ROI if someone really asks for it. Outages, right? A lot of times you will see the reporting outage or system outage, and many times those system outages or reporting outages are caused by data quality. So how many hours the report was down, how many people were involved to resolve that issue, that kind of can get you to the cost of a data quality issue, right? That's one way. The second way is constantly our business partners are building jobs or reconciliation jobs or audit jobs to make sure that from the data production all the way to the reporting or for modeling, the data is consistent. And if you look at it in our current on-premise environment, and it's a story pretty much everywhere you go, the data silos is the biggest issue. Now, if I have 10 data silos, because I have 10 business functions in the company, and even if they've written 30, 40 jobs to reconcile or audit, that's your cost, not just the cost of writing the SaaS jobs, the effort taken to write those jobs, but then compute. You're running that constantly in the environment. And when you start to translate that into cloud, now you're looking at OpEx charge, right?
Yes.
Until on premises, you are not looking at really the charge itself, but then now when you go to the cloud, that's an OpEx cost to you. So to me, like those two factors are certainly there. We can build an ROI if needed, but I can just take 2 or 3 cases and kind of justify that we do need a data quality, data observability platform to be constantly observing and managing, monitoring and alerting on the data quality issues.
So,
Yeah,
Himani,
hey, Sanjeev, let me just add something if you don't mind.
no, no, please go ahead.
Yeah, Hamali just made me think of something. So, one of the things, in banking that happens is, banks buy and sell risk. So we're buying banks, but sometimes we're also selling portfolios, maybe portfolios that we're no longer going to, originate new loans or something like that. So what I'm finding is, if we inherited a portfolio or we bought a portfolio or we didn't really organize the data well, and I'll give you an example, like in the case of a piece of collateral, a lot of banks get a collateral description that might be 250 characters long, and there's a lot of really good information in there, but it's only in one field. And so when you try to parse that information out, it becomes really difficult to have the details you need when somebody's going to potentially buy a loan portfolio. And so those are the kinds of things you run into. That's a different kind of data quality issue. It's really about, kind of availability, and format potentially is an issue. And it can also be that there's just a gap. You inherited something and they just didn't collect the data. So there's it's not available. So those kinds of things we run into kind of fairly often since we're doing a lot of M&A.
Yeah. So, Mark, that's actually so interesting you brought that up because as soon as you mentioned that, the thought that crossed my mind was, wait for it, ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Because this is exactly what LLMs are meant to do, is to read that long string of free-flowing text. And then by assigning vectors, they can do a very intelligent vector search and find what is the context of that. So maybe there's a future waiting for data quality to use these large language models and then try to extract anomalies, classify data, PII information. Would you agree? Either one?
Yeah, it's interesting. I did do a presentation to a master's program a few weeks ago, and this Chat GPT obviously came up. I mean, I think there's a lot of really positive opportunities that are going to evolve. In this particular case, there may be existing technologies that do this really well. A lot of times it's just how quickly can you turn it around, because when you're buying and selling assets, you don't have time maybe to put something in place. But I do think, certainly unstructured data or data like this that is hard to mine, even with some of our more advanced data science tools that are out there, I think these kinds of models have a lot of promise. And I told that class that my data strategy document that we delivered for the first time in January was out of date the minute I published it because it did not include generative AI. So it's on my board for our 2024 version of the data strategy document.
That
Yes,
is,
so Sanjeev, I would add that what you'd mentioned, anomaly detection, right? I think right now, even if I think about data quality, it's mostly reactive. It's after the fact the data is ingested, after the fact the data is prepared, after the fact it's used by models. So how can ChatGPT or generative AI get us to a proactive, right? How do I, get
Mm.
alerted that there might be an issue coming up in your data pipeline? So that's how does generative AI or any such technology going to get us from reactive to proactive? I think that would be the interesting part in this space to watch for.
yeah, I like that. Yes, because yeah, being if you are proactive, then you can catch errors before they have this impact. Which actually takes me back to this whole ROI thing, which both of you said is very hard to calculate. And it's like, if you do something extremely well, the management doesn't see your value. If you're a DBA, I learned that. And or email management, if email never goes down, no one cares what you do.
I
But
think that's the whole IT problem, though. As long as things are going fine, it's
yes,
all perfect. But the
yes,
minute there's a glitch, IT, data, security, reporting, model, you go anywhere. The
yeah,
minute anything goes wrong, you're in a spotlight.
yes.
You're
Well,
driven by time,
yeah.
criticality, dollar amount, everything.
Sanjeev, the example I gave you, it's kind of a real example that, if we want to sell a portfolio and we can't, that is something the CEO and the CFO will be very interested in. So I
Correct.
actually plan on turning that example I was describing,
Yeah,
into basically a data quality, slide
right.
for our next technology steering committee where they sit, so I can explain to them kind of what some of the challenges were in trying to prepare, what should be a relatively easy, file for an investment banker to work with. That becomes really difficult, and that's, that is a kind of a use case that they need to understand. And so when we go and ask for, money to do data quality projects or to invest in technology, I'll probably remind them, this is why we're focused on it. Because these things they're not just happening in a vacuum.
Yeah.
So in that case, Mark, how does a management take it? And I'm literally stuck on this thing that how do you convince the management to invest in a new data quality or data observability tool?
Well, in our case, we in banking and, obviously healthcare and some other highly regulated industries, our regulators are very interested in a couple things. One, the first thing they're typically interested in is they want to come in and talk to small banks that are growing fast like ours. They want to talk to us about data governance. Do we have a data governance program? But what they really mean beyond data governance is, do you have a data quality program? How are you involved with different business lines? Who's helping to correct the data? So when you really unravel when they talk about data governance, it's really a much wider kind of exam footprint. And so for us, we really focused on the feedback our regulators were giving us. Just last year, we got feedback about the concept of data risk. And so, I was asked to write a definition for data risk. There's no regulatory guidance really in the US that defines data risk, but a lot of large banks have already been asked to do this. So, we wrote a definition, and the first pillar in the definition is data quality
Oh,
risk.
wow.
So, so I get to, present that to our steering committee, that gets to roll up to the board. And so I can use that kind of as a platform to make requests, and we can talk about it under that context. The other thing I've tried to do, and I know this is not, this may not be possible in most companies, but I always try to put a little bit of money in my budget each year to kind of work on data quality remediation, because oftentimes our business partners they may not quite be ready maybe to foot the bill. They may not be planning for it. Whereas I'm pretty confident we're going to run into something this year. So I may try to fund a couple small remediation projects to kind of get momentum and then use that as a case study to teach, other teams about, the importance of data quality.
That's great. Himali, how about yourself?
So yeah, I think within AutoZone, it's a very established thought process that yes, our data does have a lot of quality issues. And so I don't think I have to prove as such to provide the ROI. But as I said before, I think those are the 2, 3 things which kind of help us drive the business case to get a data quality product. And also when we're looking at the data strategy, building that as part of our data ops practice itself, and then the whole alerting and monitoring and observability is coming to front end. Building your scorecard, what does the scorecard look like from quality perspective? So right now we are focusing on timeliness, accuracy, and completeness. At some point in time we'll explore it further, and then anomaly detection is certainly big part of our whole data strategy, data quality discussion. That yes, I can report on completeness, I can report on quality, accuracy, and timeliness, but then how do I take it a level up, at a leadership level up, that this is my quality scorecard for the entire data lake from end to end meaning, ingestion of the data all the way to delivering insights from the data. So how do we build that overall scorecard? And that scorecard can ultimately at some point in time also help us drive ROI. So there's certainly a lot of focus on, and it's not just us who's asking for, the data teams who are asking for. I've started to see that even my IT counterparts who are responsible for different functional areas, when they are bringing the reporting requirements to us or any kind of machine learning requirements to us, they have started to ask, are you providing me any kind of metric which tells me that the data, the insight from the model is accurate, or the reporting is accurate, the data and the reports are accurate, the alert which comes out from a report is accurate. So now we're seeing the demand from those from those counterparts also showing up. So there is certainly a case to be made in AutoZone. Don't think anybody is going to deny that. So I have enough support from that perspective to go after building an overall data quality strategy as part of data strategy.
I want to see what if Mark has anything to add to it, because the question that I would like to come back to is as the demand is increasing and you see more and more requests coming, I just sounds to me that data engineering team could become a bottleneck. But before we go there, Mark, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as I mentioned, I have kind of the data operations. So let's think of that like sourcing data and building pipelines. And we have data delivery, which is a team that's focused on, delivering certified data to self-service, users that might be using Tableau and Alteryx. But then at the same time, they may be building, production solutions that are going to be used by executives. So I'm fortunate. We're kind of a small but talented team, that's growing, that we have folks that are working with the end products, and we have people who are helping to build the engineering side of it. So we communicate with each other. The intent is that we get better at it, but we can use some of our projects to basically provide feedback, back into the data governance program. Hey, we noticed this in the last project we did. Could we put that in your data governance forum meeting for a topic and get some discussion started around, what we saw? So I'm fortunate in that we're a little bit smaller, and we have some direct, ownership over many of these pieces. But I do really think it's about communicating, trying to draw your business teams in so that they can begin to see, what some of the challenges are.
I think to add to that, data federation also, so where do you draw the line between what needs to be an enterprise data preparation versus what you can give it to business functions as a federated model? So as part of, as you said, self-service analytics, as data engineering team, we would take responsibility to a certain extent where, you're ingesting and curating the data as an enterprise function, maybe establishing some OBTs and byte tables as an enterprise function. But then when it comes to specific business data marts or business specific tables, could you federate that piece to the business functions, but then still establish those standards so that when they are building those federated data models, federated data marts, they're still following the best practices which are established by the enterprise team. So one of the things which we are doing heavily is we just don't create a pipeline by itself. What we have done is we have created patterns and frameworks, and there is a decision tree. So if this is the source and this is the destination, what are the attributes of the source and destination based on, you would pick a platform or a framework or a pattern, and that's how you deliver a pipeline. So, you really have to then, in data engineering, the federated data preparation, and on top of this whole concept of data literacy has to tie in.
Yeah.
So data literacy also, yes, there is a data literacy component of how to use BigQuery, how to use Looker Studio. But then we are also thinking about data literacy as how to utilize that decision tree to finally pick the right pattern and framework to build it. So I think that's the only way. When the demand of data is growing, the demand of reporting is growing, the whole Gartner 4 thing, right? Descriptive, diagnostic, prescriptive, predictive, all of those frameworks. When that need is growing, as you said, data engineering teams are going to become a roadblock or a bottleneck. So we are looking at that approach of that federating the data marts portion.
So is that the same as...
We are in the last 1 minute, so just want to remind.
Correct, yeah. So is that the same idea as decentralized data mesh and building data products? Is that what you're going to?
So very good point. I know like that data mesh always comes into the conversation. We did talk about data mesh. I think data mesh requires a data mesh requires a fundamental change to the whole IT, business, and data teams, right? That requires a fundamental change. So yes, when we're looking at the federated data model, we are looking at, could we, start to establish the practice, because it will eventually require the whole culture change, but could we start to establish as a baby step of practice where, yes, IT and business teams, when I say IT teams, either the application teams and business teams start to take responsibility of some of the data they're producing.
Thank you so much for your time. We started with data mesh and we're ending on that note. This has been an amazing event. Thank you. And we'll wrap up, and really appreciate Himali and Mark for coming to this panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you for
all.
the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much.